Hello, Swifto here, and welcome to the 7th and penultimate part of my silly little audio story, Lab Rats, The Whole Story. For this 7th part, I shall be reading Chapter 12, A Whole Lot of Profit. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 12, A Whole Lot of Profit. Back in the lab, the kindly fat shopkeeper John was slowly regaining consciousness. He scratched his black curly beard and stretched his arms out while yawning. As he opened his eyes, he was confused and still half asleep. He assumed that he was dreaming still. He couldn't quite work things out in the dim darkness of the lab, and he felt strange waking up in the chair and not his own bed, which he was accustomed to doing. He couldn't quite work out why he couldn't feel his pillow under his head, and why his bed felt so cold and uncomfortable. He tried to rest his head back down where he thought his pillow should be, but his head just fell back into thin air over the ratty old armchair's low headrest. It was this sudden jolt of falling backwards that made John come fully back from his daydreaming state. Slowly his mind switched on, and suddenly it all came flooding back to him. He remembered now about the lab, the two kids he had met, and their silly story of time machines and portals. He staggered to his feet while rubbing his big bald head, looking around at the mess, and realised he had not been dreaming after all. He called out to the two boys, but there was no answer. Regaining his composure now, he decided that the two boys had already left, and that he must find them before they got into serious trouble. He walked out into the hallway and over to the main door of the building, which he somehow knew was there for some reason, even though he came in through the roof unconscious. Whatever. Pulling on the handle, he found the door locked, and then he spotted the number pad. Damn it, he sighed, guessing that the boys had locked him in. He turned around and tried to think if there was another way out. He spotted the mop, which had previously fallen on his manhood shortly before, lying on the ground, poking out of an open door. He went over to investigate it. He found that the door was that of a small cupboard filled with cleaning items that had been stolen from his shop. He sighed angrily and went into the cupboard and up the steps behind it that led to the roof of the building. When he had climbed up the steps, he was confronted by the strangest sight that he had ever seen. All around him, like huge high walls, curving upwards to a blacker-than-black hole, high above him was the street pavement, stretched out around the whole building. My God, he gasped in wonder. Those kids were right. They really have made some kind of portal to another world. He now looked over to the rope that was attached to the roof that went all the way up to the black spot in the sky. He guessed that it must have been the way out, and that the boys had placed the rope there themselves in order to escape. John grabbed hold of the rope and struggled painfully to get his big lump of a body up the skinny rope to freedom. It took him some time, but eventually, with much exasperation, he finally reached a point where he could feel the force of the portal pushing against him. As he struggled to hang on to the rope, he looked around and saw the pavement slowly materializing on this side of the portal. Very slowly, bit by bit, the pavement was being stretched and pulled into this bubble universe. As the portal was pulling everything on the other side in, that meant that John had to pull against the force of the portal with all his strength in order to pull himself out again. By now the portal was much larger and stronger than it had been for Paul and Colin, who had in comparison a much easier time getting out than John was now having. Finally, a near-exhausted John pulled himself free of the portal's grip, and he came flying out of the other side onto the road. The lamppost buckled under the strain of both John and the portal and collapsed, bending and twisting its way half submerged into the portal. John breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat away from his shiny head. Had he just been a few moments too late, he would have surely been shaken off the buckling rope and fallen back down onto the roof of the lab. "Whoa, dude, what is that? You alright, man?" a young man said as he came over to see if John was alright. "Yeah, I'm fine, thanks," John answered as he struggled back onto his own 2 feet. "Whoa, man, that's trippy. Where did this huge hole come from?" Well, I don't know how to explain it. It's just there." The young man tried to peer closer into the hole and stood dangerously close to the edge. John gently pulled him back. "I wouldn't get too close if I were you," he said. "Why, what's down there, dude? Does it go into the sewers? It's so dark I can't even see anything down there." The young man picked up a pebble off the road and flung it into the portal. The pebble reached the portal and to their eyes seemed to stop in mid-air for a second before vanishing. The young man tried to look down into the never-ending darkness to see what had happened to it. He turned his head and listened to the sound of the pebble hitting the bottom, or at least the side of the hole, but no sound ever came. "No way, dude, this hole must be like super big and stuff. I'm gonna get some of my buddies round and get some rope and see how far down it goes." "No, you can't do that." "Why not?" John, having now realised that Paul and Colin had been telling the truth, worried that any interference with their portal would not only get them into trouble, but may also cause further problems with the portal. Despite the fact that the 2 boys had run away from him and Paul had stolen from his shop many times, the big man had an even bigger heart and felt sorry for the boys. He was also very curious about them and wanted to know more about the strange things that they were doing in this old lab. He now decided that he wanted to show that he could be trusted by helping them out with their current strange situation. You can't get your buddies round here because it's not actually a hole." "Huh? You drunk, old man? Can't you see how deep it is?" Yeah, but it's not really there." "Yeah, it's an optical illusion. See?" "What?" "The stone you just threw in. Did you actually see it go in? Watch this. Watch very closely." John picked up another pebble and threw it in. The same thing happened as before. The pebble seemed to stop in mid-air for a second before disappearing. "You see?" said John. "It didn't go in, did it? It just vanished." "That's because the hole isn't really there. As I said, it's an optical illusion. The pebble's still there on the ground. It's just hidden among the lights and mirrors and stuff." "Whoa, that's totally trippy. You mean if I was just to stick my hand in?" "No, don't. That would mess things up and spoil the illusion." "Oh, sorry, man, I didn't know. So is this your illusion thingy, man? How does it work?" "No, not my doing. I'm just on guard. It's an art piece created especially to celebrate the new millennium." The young man smiled and pointed to the police car across the road. "Ah, now I get you, man. You're a police officer, right? Sorry, I didn't realise without your uniform." That's right. I'm a police officer. My uniform's in the wash." "No worries, officer, man. I won't touch the trippy hole illusion thing. I'm gonna go and get some of my buddies round and they can have a look at it too." "No, wait, don't do that," John called out, but the young man had already gone around the street corner. He wanted to go after him and stop him from bringing more people around, but at the same time, he worried that others would discover the hole and accidentally fall in. He decided that it was best just to stay where he was and make sure no one else would interfere with it. Meanwhile, Paul and Colin were getting anxious again. There was a bit of wind picking up and various strange noises could be heard off in the darkness. They feared that there was something sinister lurking in the woods, and more they felt the heavy gaze of some unknown hunter bearing down on them from afar. Paul was almost panic-stricken into a frenzy of fitful fear once more as he saw the last yellow flickers of his torch shine their last before fading away into the darkness. Colin's torch had already ran out of battery, and for the last few minutes He had just Paul's light to comfort him in the pitch black. But now that the light had gone out, the two were left in total darkness within Farway's forest, surrounded by the unsettling sounds of things moving about around them. Damn it, I could have sworn these were barely used batteries, Paul said as he tried pushing the torch's switch in the hopes that it would come back on again. Now what do we do? Colin asked. He received no answer from Paul, who was now stuck motionless with fear. He thought he had seen a flick of red light shining in the darkness, and had ideas that they were being watched by some animal or monster. There's something here, he whispered before quickly walking on ahead. Wait, Paul, don't go too far away from me. Okay, come on, hurry up. Here, take my hand. They fumbled about in the darkness for a moment before they finally found each other and held tightly onto each other's hands. There was a strange swishing sound, and Paul was sure something had just flown over his head. Shit! He cried out. They stumbled on, pushing through the trees, often getting twigs and branches stuck in sensitive areas. After getting one too many twigs in the eye, Colin decided just to close his eyes as there was nothing to see anyway. Then suddenly there was a loud thump which vibrated through the soil and startled the two boys. Paul's head felt like it was on fire, and he felt his heart beating loudly in his ears. His chest was sore with his tiny racing heart pumping like crazy. Colin let go of Paul's hand and tried to stay as still as he could, while listening out for other strange sounds. There was another loud thump, followed by another, and then another. It was clear that there was some very large creature nearby, and Colin dreaded to open his eyes in fear that he would see Paul's green-eyed demon again. The thudding footsteps continued, and Colin started to tremble with fear. He was sure that this would be their end. But as they both sat quietly beside a big old tree, listening to the thumping footsteps, they both perceived that it was getting quieter. Whatever was out there was evidently moving away from them. Soon it got so quiet again that all Colin could hear was his own breathing. He couldn't even hear Paul anymore. For a moment he wondered if Paul was still there. He felt completely alone in the cold and the dark, and he was worried that Paul had wandered off without him while he sat there shivering. He was just about to softly whisper Paul's name to see if he was still beside him, when suddenly he jumped in shock as a sound like a shrieking banshee to his ear scared his eyes open. It was the sound of Paul's voice that had startled him as he whispered loudly to Colin, "Look at that!" As soon as Colin's eyes were open, he immediately closed them again as the pain of the intense white light hit his retina. Bright shining light entered his world again and dispelled the darkness of his mind. It made him feel glad, and he felt he was somehow going to be okay now. Paul and Colin could barely keep their eyes open through the blinding white rays of the light that shone out at them. The white light seemed to fade dim until it was tolerable, but would then quickly shine bright again, only to fade, and so it pulsated in this way while Paul and Colin got used to having light again. The light did not seem as sharp and irritating as it had done a few moments ago. Now that they were used to it, they could see just what was making the light. There was an object which seemed to be up above, in the trees, not too far away. Paul stood up and switched on his Game Boy. He turned and smiled at Colin. "We did it! We found our mysterious power source. Come on." As they got closer to the light, Colin had a strange sense of déjà vu, as if somehow he remembered this place. "Okay," said Paul. "If it's a UFO, some kind of alien spacecraft or something, be very calm. In fact, don't say anything. I'm sure whatever alien life forms are aboard are already aware of the portal and know how dangerous it is for the whole galaxy. I'm sure they'll want to help us, for their own sake at least." "I don't think it's aliens actually, Paul." "Huh? What makes you so sure?" "I just have a feeling." As they got closer to the light source, they now saw that the object emitting the light was in fact very small. So small, in fact, Paul now had serious doubts that this was the object that had appeared to be so powerful on his scanner. "This has to be some kind of trick," said Paul. He switched his Game Boy on again and then switched it off while shaking his head. "What? But how could something that small have so much energy? It defies all logic." Way up high, wedged between two tree branches, was a small crystal-like object emitting the pulsating white light that had attracted the boy's attention. "Well, I better get up there and see what's what, I suppose," Paul said as he began to climb the tree. "Careful now," Colin called out. Colin looked up as Paul quite dexterously made his way up branch by branch, checking one first to see how strong it was, using another to support his footing. As Colin looked up at Paul, now almost at arm's reach of the crystal, he suddenly felt a cold shiver as though someone was behind him. He suddenly turned around but saw nothing. Then he remembered how he had seen himself standing in the same spot as the one he was now in, back when they had been in the empty void. "What is it?" Paul called out. "Huh? I've just remembered something." "You did? About your past? That's great. I'll be right down." Paul took off his jacket and stretched it out with both hands. He wasn't sure if it was a good idea to touch the strange glowing crystal and feared that it could be hot or even radioactive, so he decided that he would use his jacket to handle it. He wrapped his jacket around the crystal and waited to see if anything would happen. They were in darkness again now, and Colin, on the ground, felt very vulnerable just standing there. "Come on," he whispered to Paul. "What are you waiting for?" "Sorry, I was just checking something." As Paul handled his jacket, which was now wrapped up in a ball, he was glad to feel that it was quite cool and the crystal had not burned it. He unwrapped it a little to let some light out, and carefully he slowly descended the tree. He snapped a branch right at the bottom of the tree and caught the bottom of his trousers on it. He tripped and his jacket fell out of his hands and the crystal tumbled out onto the ground. Colin, who had much less regard for safety than Paul, crouched down and picked up the crystal with his bare hands. "No, stop!" Paul cried out as he freed himself from the tree branch. "What's the matter?" Colin said as he held the crystal up like a torch. "You idiot! You bloody lucky idiot! That thing, as I've said already, somehow contains the power of a sun. For all you know, it could have burned your flesh instantly. It may even be giving us radiation as we speak. And you just picked the damn thing up as though it was nothing." Colin looked it over, then bounced it about in his hand. "Seems okay to me." Seeing how roughly Colin was handling the crystal made Paul jump in fear that he might somehow cause it to suddenly explode. "Would you be careful with that thing? We have no idea how powerful it really is, or how unstable it may be." "Not to worry, Paul, old friend. It's in safe hands." At that moment, Colin accidentally dropped the crystal, and Paul flung himself away in fear, tripping into a bush in the process. Colin picked the crystal up off the ground and waved apologetically to Paul. "Sorry." Paul angrily punched the bush around him and struggled back up onto his feet. Delgado was now in his underwear, as John had taken his uniform for his disguise. John, in Delgado's tight-fitting uniform, shuffled the unconscious Delgado into the back of the police car. He had an even harder time with Ainley. It was a hell of a struggle to lift up Ainley due to his whale of a human body. John wiped the sweat away from his brow and looked over at the hole, which was now beginning to consume the road. He had used the police tape which he had found in the police car to form a barrier around the hole in order to stop people getting closer to it. He saw the shadow of someone coming around the corner across the street from the police car and quickly covered up Officers Ainley and Delgado with a sheet to prevent anyone seeing them unconscious in the back of the car. John couldn't quite believe what he was doing and wondered how the hell he had gotten into this mess. How did he end up in this crazy situation, impersonating a police officer? His heart was racing as he went across the street, eyeing the ever-growing hole as he walked past it. The person coming towards him then appeared, turning the corner. John breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that it was only Bill. He now had to try and explain to Bill why he was impersonating a police officer, and why there was now a large hole where the old lab had been. Bill took a double take when he saw the strange sight of John in the police uniform and the lab building behind him missing. "Well, it's a funny story," John began to explain. Bill blinked in disbelief, unable to make sense of his friend's funny story. Now that Paul and Colin had found the mysterious power source and were bringing it back to the lab, they felt that they could relax a bit. They were both exhausted with all the excitement and fear that they had had to endure over the last few hours. But they were far from finished and still had much work to do. It was a long, slow walk back through the woods, and although Paul was pretty sure that they were retracing their footsteps well enough, there was some doubt as to whether they were still going in the right direction. They had been able to find the power source well enough using Paul's makeshift Game Boy scanner, but now that they had found it, there wasn't really any good way of getting a sense of which direction to take to get out of the woods again. A few indistinct footprints was all they could use, and Paul cursed himself for not having a compass, or even to think about not avoiding muddier areas so as to leave more footprints. He had been so focused on getting to the power source that such thoughts had not occurred to him before. He had somehow assumed that all they needed to do was to get to the power source and everything would sort itself out. Guessing that it was probably some kind of alien spaceship, he had hoped, somewhat naively, that they would give him a lift back. Colin held the glowing crystal up high and waved it over towards a tree that had caught his attention. "There," said Colin. "Look, that's the same broken branch that you snapped when you were climbing down from the tree. I told you we were going round in circles." "It's not. You said that the last time we happened to pass a tree with a broken branch. I assure you, it's not the same tree." "It bloody is. We've passed this same tree 3 times now. I'm telling you." "Rubbish." "Oh yeah? Is that not the same bush you fell in? Look at it. It's been crushed by your fat arse." No, that must be the bush that you fell in. Remember when you tried to run away like a big scaredy cat? The hell it is. Look, trust me, I've never gotten lost before. I've always had a good sense of direction, and I swear that we're going in the right direction. Bah! You think you're so smart, but you don't know everything, you know. No, of course I don't, but I'm pretty sure I know a lot more than you do. After all, I have an enhanced brain, while you, on the other hand, well, you don't even remember your own name. Just because you happen to have a greater store of knowledge than I do, doesn't necessarily mean you're more intelligent. What? That's just stupid. Knowing things is intelligence. Is that so? So by that logic, isn't the smarter Ray just as intelligent as you? Given that it must also have the same knowledge stored inside it that it gave to you. Don't be stupid, that's a machine. It just stores information. It can't use it. Exactly my point. You could have a machine that has all the knowledge of all time and space stored inside it, but if it can't use it, then all it is simply just a machine. It's not knowledge that defines intelligence, it's the ability to use that knowledge that makes you intelligent. Okay, fair enough. You may have a point, but so what? Have I not proven my intelligence by using my knowledge to build a time machine, or to make a sophisticated scanner out of a Game Boy, and find that crystal with the power of the sun that you're currently holding? Yes, that's true, I grant you, but is it not also true that your computer helped you to find the crystal in the first place, and who also, in her own funny kind of way, kept you sane all these years by giving you something else other than the time machine to focus on? Oh, come on, you're not trying to tell me. Let me finish. If it is not true that having knowledge and being able to use it in an intelligent way defines intelligence in people, then why do you not also consider it to be intelligence when a computer can do the same thing? Why doesn't the computer deserve the same basic rights that any person might have? All she wants is a name, Paul. It's not so much to ask, really, is it? Maybe. Maybe you have a point. I would say that the computer that my dad built, and that I rebuilt, is a very complex and sophisticated machine capable of replicating human-like intelligence, but that it is still just a machine, made out of specialised parts and only capable of interacting and using data in the same way that it has been programmed. However, the same could be said in a sense about many kinds of lower life forms, and yet we still classify them as life. Yes, Colin, I feel perhaps that maybe you're right. I guess I have been wrong to treat the computer the way that I have. It's just, well, it is my dad's creation. I rebuilt it in wonder and honour of my long-lost parent. But as the years have gone on, I've not only came to dislike the computer with a constant irritation, but the more I think about that night, of the fire, and how my dad seemed totally fine, experimenting on his only son, the more I've come to the conclusion that he was a bad man, and my efforts to go back in time to somehow save him seems a fool's errand. There are times where I lay awake at night, wondering if it has all been worth it, dedicating my whole life to this one desire to build the time machine and set everything right again. Maybe it has all been a mistake. It seems at this moment especially that the time machine has caused more damage than it's worth. No, you're wrong, Paul. It's true that if it wasn't for your mistake with the time machine, I wouldn't be here, but I feel that I'm glad to have been brought here. I met you, and had this crazy little adventure. You built a time machine? Okay, it might not work very well, but still, it's a hell of an achievement. Thanks, Colin. I'm glad to have met you too. You know, for someone who couldn't remember a thing a short while ago, you seem surprisingly wise tonight. I am feeling better now, it's true. I don't know if it's just this crystal shining light or whatever, but I am feeling much better than before. It's as if the light has calmed my mind and made it easier to think. That's a curious observation. Maybe it's having some sort of effect on us. I don't feel nearly as frightened of this forest as I did before. Oh, and while we're on the subject of you being wrong, there is something else you're wrong about, by the way, Paul. Oh, what's that? Back there, at that tree we just passed 3 times. I saw it before. Oh, so is that 4 times now, is it? Okay, shine the light on this broken branch of yours again, and I'll prove that it's not the same tree. No, I don't mean like that. I mean, I saw it before, even before we came here. Ah, you mean you had some sort of vision of some forgotten memory? Is that it? No, you don't understand. I saw you climbing that tree with the crystal, and I even saw myself standing there when I was looking up at you. I saw it when we were in the empty void. You remember when we had all those crazy visions? Nah, you thought you saw the same vision. It couldn't have been the exact same, though. Not unless you're telling me that you were some kind of fortune teller in your previous life. I swear I saw the exact same moment of you climbing up the tree to get the crystal. Perhaps you were wrong about that empty void place. Maybe it wasn't taking our memories, but showing us future events. No, that's not right. What I saw was definitely things from my past. I saw the Calmac ferry. I saw my old orphanage. Besides, you also saw how we were able to create images ourselves by thinking about them. Remember the puppets and that map of Altiov I showed you? Well, okay. But how do you explain the fact that I saw a clear image of the moment we have just lived through, of you climbing the tree and finding the crystal? Of course. Our big-headed friend. After all, he did say it was his realm. Perhaps he put that image there for us for some reason. He did also say that we would meet him again in the future, or the past. He's obviously capable of time travel himself, and did warn us that it was dangerous. Perhaps that image you saw of us getting the crystal was some kind of warning from him. A warning of what, though? A warning that it's dangerous, maybe? Perhaps getting this crystal was a mistake. Maybe we'll fail to stop the hole growing, and destroy the world after all. Why couldn't he have just told us that it wasn't going to work? Don't lose faith yet, Colin. Remember, he did say that we would meet again. That means we will succeed. Besides, I've just seen something that proves that I was right about going in this direction. Look over there. Beyond those trees there, you can see the sky, a dull orange colour. That's light pollution, and a lot of it. We must be very close to the city again. I'm sure those little bumps over there are the great pillars that hold the old Victorian gates in place. A bewildered Bill sat at the side of the pavement, looking over at the strange, big hole that his friend John was trying carefully to explain to him. So you mean this whole thing is a portal to another world? I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Believe me, I've been in there, and had a hell of a time trying to get out again. So these kids, then, what are they? Are they like super mutants, or aliens, or what the hell is going on, John? I wish I could tell you, Bill. All I know is that these kids have unleashed some kind of crazy portal to hell, and I have to make sure that no one gets hurt until they come back and fix it. If they come back, John. What? Did it not occur to you that they might have scarpered in order to save their own selfish selves? No, they said they were going to fix this, and I don't quite know why, but I believe them. And what happens if the real police show up, eh? What then? They'll see you dressed up in that silly outfit, and you'll be the one who has to pay for their mistakes. No, John, you're far too trusting of these hooligans. The real police did show up. John pointed to the police car on the other side of the hole. And look what a great job the real police did of sorting this mess out. I found those nitwits lying in the pile by their car, obviously unable to comprehend the sight of the hole. Well, maybe so, but if you ask me, John, we two should clear the hell out of here and let someone else deal with it. Come on, Bill. Are you going to be a coward all your life? Are you going to be a man for once in your life and help me out? No, I'm sorry, John, but this is far way beyond our responsibility. And no matter what you say, not even for all the money in the world, am I going to stay here next to that thing and risk my life for the sake of others. Bill got up to leave and was just about to go round the corner when a large group of young people came round it and scared him backwards. John stood up and feared that things were about to turn ugly. There it is, dude, one of the people called out. Whoa, that's extreme, man. Some kind of illusion. It looks so real. Then one of the young guys came over to Bill and pointed at him. Hey man, are you like the artist guy who made this thing? What? Bill responded. No, I'm just a simple cafe owner. Please, I have no money on me. Don't hurt me. Bill winced as he held his hands up, fearing that the young man would knife him, while trying not to shake too much and let on that his jacket pockets were full of change. Hey man, just chill out. We just came to see the awesome optical illusion thingy here. We're not here to cause trouble, honest officer, the young man pleaded with John. That's all right. I guess you can have a look at it, but please don't go too close to it. You'll spoil the delicate instruments creating the illusion. All right, whatever you say, officer. We'll just chill back here and enjoy a few beers while we wait for the new year. Oh, oops, another young man in the crowd said. What do you mean, oh, oops? Gary, you did get the beers, didn't you? I kind of forgot. Damn it, Gary. I told you to do one thing and you screwed it up again. It was at this point that Bill had an idea. He turned John aside and whispered in his ear. Leave this to me, John. I have an idea that will help us both out. You mean you'll stay here and help me after all? I knew you were a good friend. Of course I'll stay and help, John. After all, there's a whole lot of profit to be made here. John sighed and Bill rubbed his hands together while turning to the crowd with a big grin. Okay, fellas, who's thirsty? That is the end of part 7 of Lab Rats, The Whole Story. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I hope you come back for the 8th and final part of this stupid little story of mine. Thank you very much for listening, and adios for now.